I'm going to set the scene as has been said. I've got a range of experience in my, I suppose, 15, 20 years career over a number of sectors. And I'm going to bring a little bit of that to this forum. It doesn't specifically talk around, I think, some of the subject matter or the subject at hand here, which is specifically property and property development and infrastructure. But I think for the entrepreneurs in the room, it certainly should whet the appetite, because there is potential in the water space and the wastewater space. So I was given the sort of the headline topic of why is wastewater South Africa's unsung hero. I think Department of Water Sanitation is currently using that as a tagline. Is it? So currently, my perspective, and I'm going to whip through this quite quickly, is it's probably not. So what is wastewater? In my space, in my history, it's sewage. So that's domestic sewage from the municipal space. It's industrial effluent, and industrial effluent can be wide-ranging from, I suppose, highly toxic, contaminated with organic and inorganic chemicals, to benign effluent from, I suppose, the beverages industries, things like that, which actually is highly treatable. And I don't think as a society we understand that as yet. Mine decant water. I've seen banks of ROs in the mining sector, the coal mining sector in South Africa 5-10 years ago, 12 to 24 ROs on the side of a tailings dam, or sorry, not a tailings dam, a return water dam, treating water so that it can be discharged into the Vaal River. So it's treating it to a decent standard. I think the contract value back then was 6 million rand a month to run these ROs. So there's big money in treating water. Stormwater runoff in the urban environment, contaminated runoff from various sources, industrial sources, etc. Not all wastewaters are created equal. Some are very treatable, others aren't. And that's something to bear in mind. There's opportunity around those that are more easily treatable, and we're going to a little bit around that. So is it the unsung hero? As yet, no. Can it be? We've got a lot to do to change our thought around wastewater for it to become an economically viable resource. So in the long run, yes, it can be. Opportunity exists. We need to change our ways. We need to change our perceptions. Why is there slow uptake? So there's a lot of wastewater around. Okay, no clear driver. Up until now, South Africa water's been cheap. We haven't seen the full cost of that water infrastructure in our water charges. I think recently, I suppose relatively recently, the water's gone through the 10 Rand per cubic meter level. In places like Dubai, you're talking around $2 to $3 per cubic meter. Sure, desalination. But we're talking about desalination in the Western Cape. So you're talking about desalination before you're talking about water recovery. You can recover water for less than 12. So if we're paying 20 or 30 Rand a cubic meter to install a desalination, run a desalination plant, there's a whole lot of opportunity in that space around wastewater treatment. So it's cheap. Sorry. Up until now, we also haven't had the gravitas of the drought that's hit. It's not just the Western Cape, it's most of the country. The Gauteng region has been fortunate in that its supply has been augmented through the Lesotho Highland scheme. But a lot of the rest of the country has been in an absolute water crisis, and we know that. Yes, some areas have recovered. Western Cape is probably one of the few areas where that recovery hasn't happened. Why hasn't happened? Obviously, there are umpteen factors associated with that. Climate change comes into that. But the state of your infrastructure, the size of your infrastructure, probably doesn't support the demand currently. So we've got to think differently. So often it's something like a drought that brings the gravitas of the situation to bear upon us, and also creates the opportunity for the entrepreneur. What we hope isn't the case is that after the drought, assuming that there are good rains at some point in the next year or the following year, we don't forget about the problem and only deal with it when the next drought hits us, which is often the case. We've seen that before. So I live in the Belito area, and many of you may know that, I suppose in the middle of last year, we were in a similar situation in the Western Cape. Dam that supplied us, Hazelmere Dam, was 17% capacity, 15% of that was dead capacity. So we had 3 to 5% capacity available to us. In a month, the water service provider, Semcorp, Caesar Water, got approval from, or went through a public process, got approval from the community to go ahead with a water recovery plant. Okay, it's not the first time it's happened, but they did that very quickly when the pressure was on. So they put in a plant, essentially recovering water from the wastewater and putting back into the bulk water supply. So in Ballito, we are, as is the case in London, as is the case in Windhoek, we're drinking treated sewage. Doesn't taste any different, really. Okay, so there's a cost, there's a cost associated with wastewater, with wastewater installation or wastewater treatment plant. Technologies that are a challenge. So often a capex requirement for a wastewater treatment plant is in the range of 10 million in a small industrial scenario, up to excess of 500 million in the municipal space. So depending on the size, can range significantly. Again, understand the opportunity that exists in that from a financial point of view for the entrepreneurs and for the finance entities out there. There's an OPEX element to it, so it's not just about CAPEX. You have to run the thing, you have to run it properly, you have to run it according to standard. Okay, key challenge, stigma, perception, habit. As I said, at Ballito, we got through that very, very quickly when we had 2 or 3 weeks of water left. And everyone said, let's do it. A lot of people are buying their drinking water, but it's fine. So in the South African context, we have this stigma around recycled water. In the industrial space, we work across Africa. We've got clients in the beverages space. We've been recovering water at a number of sites across Africa in that beverages space. For 10 years, the client refuses to put the treated water back into product that we all drink. Okay, I suppose the aspect of that is the water that we are providing back to the client. So we're recovering 60% of their wastewater. That water goes to an RO plant. It is as good as your bottled water that you buy, Valpre or whatever it is. Okay, Valpre is not RO, but a lot of the bottled water comes through an RO. It's treated by RO, so it's as good as that quality, and it's significantly better quality than what that site is getting, or those sites are getting from the municipalities, but they won't put into the product. So it's just a perception issue. The quality metrics, the standards, the analyses are there to prove the quality, but it's just a perception. So all of that water that we recover is being used for wash water, etc., but not going into the product. And at times they don't use it all, so they're wasting it. Technical operational challenges. There's a multitude of technologies depending on the sector you're in. Unbundling that, unpacking that, getting the right advice is critical, putting the right solution in place is critical, and then understanding how to operate that. So our experience historically is put in a wastewater treatment works. Sometimes the wrong solution is installed, but typically it's not then run properly. It's not seen as a business venture. It's not seen as revenue generating. It's not seen as process critical or business critical. So wastewater treatment plants are put in place, installed, and then they're left to their own devices, and they often fail for that reason. Legislation, there is significant opportunity. If we look at clusters, if we look at certainly in the industrial side, can one person's wastewater be another person's raw material or resource? Most certainly. Okay, but there is legislation stopping that. So you've got to become a water service provider to provide somebody else with water. Can you get through that? Probably, but there's a process to that. But there is opportunity. And then location and infrastructure. Is the location, are you close enough to the user? Okay, can you put water back into the bulk water supply, treated wastewater back into the bulk water supply, logistically and from an infrastructure point of view? If you have to put the infrastructure in place and it's kilometers apart, your cost goes through the roof, obviously. So you've got to look at the opportunity as a whole, understand what it is, and try and package it so that it works from a financial, logistic, and operational cost point of view going forward. What do we currently do? You'll all know. Municipal coastal areas, discharge through sea outfalls, so through sea outfall pipelines, etc. Or inland environmental discharge, so treat to a point and then discharge. Yeah, that water in the inland areas is used by downstream urban areas. In the marine, on the coastal areas, it goes straight to the sea. Water can be recovered umpteen times. I think, what is the stat that's bandied around London? 7 times. So just an example, by way of example, in terms of volumes available, in 2014, Cape Town's volume was 1.14 million cubes per day. Current target, I think, and you guys will probably be in a better position than me, is 500 cubes a day in terms of total water use. Even if you recover half of that, that's significant. Okay, problem is you've got umpteen wastewater treatment works in different locations, so the scalability of the opportunity has to be unpacked properly. Pulp mills and industrial space. We work with a number of pulp mills in South Africa, up to 60 cubes of wastewater per ton of product, and some of these pulp mills are doing 2,000 tons a day. So work out that volume. It's, I suppose, not quite as much as Cape Town, but it's significant. Beverage industry, typical ETP, wastewater treatment plant, 2 to 4 megalitres a day. You can recover most of that. Certainly 60%. If you put a treatment train in place, you can return 60% of the water back to the intake or offtake. What are the charges? Currently, I mentioned we've gone through that 10 Rand per cubic meter. Some of our clients are sitting at 17, 18, depending on where you are in South Africa. And certainly there's margin in that. So for the investor, for the entrepreneur, there is margin in that space. So what do municipalities do? They charge for potable water at a rate. You now discharge water. So in the industrial process, or even in the domestics, on the domestic side of things, you buy water at a rate. You use some of that. What is the human uses, let's say 2 to 4 liters per day, or consumes 2 to 4 liters per day. The rest is wastewater, essentially. A little bit of evaporation if you're watering your garden. I doubt any of you guys are. But most of that goes straight through to discharge, and there's a charge associated with that. Industrial space, exactly the same. Then in the industrial space, again, there are discharges, or there are charges for COD, total suspended solids, etc. So additional charges on top of the charge to treat the wastewater. So if you can package something, there's opportunity both from a water sale of water perspective, as well as from a reduction in your effluent charges perspective. Okay, so let's look at that. So wastewater treatment, there's a saving if you're going to do wastewater treatment in the industrial space predominantly. You discharge to municipal wastewater treatment works. They'll charge for volume, they'll charge for COD. So if you put an effluent treatment plant in place, you can reduce that COD charge. You can also, if you recover water, reduce the charge, the volumetric charge. That's a straight charge per cubic meter of water that you dispose through that system. The opportunity around recovery. So in many spaces, and to a degree in the domestic sector as well, there's an opportunity to recover biogas from effluent. So if your effluent is organic effluent, if you're dealing with a sewage, so high concentration organic effluent, you can actually get a significant quantity of energy from that effluent. So again, use a distillery as an example. We're in the space where we can provide 80% of that distillery's energy requirement, total energy requirement, from the distillery's effluent. I know there are a couple down in the Western Cape. In the brewery space, that number is 20%, but you're still generating energy for the operation. And I think the number is significantly lower in the municipal space, but you can certainly cover the energy costs associated with running the ETP. Water recovery. So if you will recover water, you sell the water back. Simple equation. Other opportunities we've seen in the precious metal space, where you're treating the effluent, you're treating a sludge, there's opportunity to recover the product. And again, there's additional revenue associated with that. So in all, there is opportunity. You've got to unpack it properly. Many of our projects that we look at sit in the 3 to 5 year return on investment, so payback period. So some of them can be, if you put all of those factors together there, your project can be quite viable. You've got to select the right projects. And as Standard Bank will, I'm sure Standard Bank will support the state, there is money available for investment in this type of project. What do you need? You obviously got to ensure that there's a stable effluent source. So I'm jumping right to the end. Stable effluent source, and there's stable users of the products that you're going to generate from that wastewater treatment process. Okay, how do you do this? PPPs, boot type projects. One has to be prepared to invest the capex, and one has to be prepared to support that with an OPEX cost. But there's a business case for it at an industrial and an urban level. Obviously, when you're distilling this down to specific property investments, it very much depends, the viability depends on the size and the volume. So there's scalability in all of this, and the opportunity exists where you can scale. So if you're doing a development cluster, from a domestic surge point of view, from a surge perspective, if you can cluster that and build one plant as opposed to 5 plants, you get your economies of scale. And you can there is certainly a financial model to support that. So that's how you create a hero. It can be a hero, although I think South Africa probably needs more of a hero than that right now. But it certainly can contribute to reducing our water footprint and reducing the water that we extract from the environment, making that water go a lot further. Remember, the molecule of water is infinitely recyclable. Okay, yeah, the challenges, but we've got the minds in the room and around us to solve those challenges. Technologies are there, they're all available to us. We can do a lot of things with water. Okay, that's me. Thanks.